Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network, home to long-established shows like Missing Frames, Nerd Nuptial and Aggressive Negotiations, and some brand new shows like Retro Perspective that looks back at the films released in the year 1994, and the A24 Project, a bit of a shameless plug here, hosted by myself and Dallas, that discuss two films every 2 weeks, distributed by A24. But this week, me and Dallas are going to pick out our top 5 picks for the Glasgow Film Festival. But firstly, Dallas, what have you watched and perhaps seen this week on the big screen and the stage?
Well, on the stage, I was in the audience with yourself at the Royal Scottish National Orchestra's Sci-Spectacular this past Friday, where they entertained us with themes from the Star Wars, I was going to say trilogy, no, the Star Wars saga, because it included the prequels, and not the sequels, what do you call 7, 8, and 9? I guess they're sequels.
The sequel trilogy, I've heard it called.
Is that what it's called? Is that the official canon type thing? So yeah, those, and then
paging Aggressive Negotiations.
Absolutely, yeah. And then taking us through a few other galaxies far, far away, taking in some Star Trek and Alien and such like. And it was a thoroughly entertaining evening with the musicians on top form, and it was great to hear some of these live. You know, we've went to the Star Wars A New Hope live with the orchestra, but I think this one, with the venue being the Usher Hall, the sound is better in a venue like that. And I mean, I've heard the Star Wars sort of stuff played before, so it was nice to hear a few different things. And I was surprised. I'm not the biggest Star Trek fan on this certain network, but even I, was very impressed with their performance of Michael Giacchino's Star Trek Into Darkness score. I just loved how he's incorporated the old themes and managed to create something new and sort of iconic for is it the Kelvin universe? Is that correct? Am I right?
The Kelvin timeline, yes, well done. I'm not a fan of as much as some people, and then you name a really obscure timeline. Well done.
Well, I try. I try.
But yeah, I thought it was a really great show. I mean, I've heard a lot of the Star Wars music kind of live before at similar kind of John Williams events, but I mean, that was some of the first time I'd heard some of the stuff from The Last Jedi, Battle for Heroes. That was the first time I'd heard that as well. That was one of the highlights of the prequels for me. So it was good that there was a kind of nice mix of old and new, and again, this second time in as many weeks that we've heard the 20th Century Fox theme tune performed to a rapturous applause. So yeah, it was a really fantastic show, and I'm sure they'll have plenty of other great shows kind of through the rest of the year.
Yeah, I know that they're doing a mini tour that's coming up to Aberdeen, actually. They've just reopened the music hall, so I believe they're doing the music of Harry Potter later on. I think it's around about May time, and they're also doing the Back to the Future with a live orchestra score again. That's going on tour as well. That was the first one that they did for the Edinburgh International Film Festival, and it was one of the greatest screenings I've ever been at. And they've done it for the last 3 years. They've sort of gotten into, I think John Williams is their favorite. I don't know if he's just the best, but the Sci-Fi Spectacular could have been called John Williams and Others, because between Star Wars and then Close Encounters and E.T., there was a lot of John Williams, but there are other people out there, and yeah, it'd be exciting to see what they've got up their sleeve for this year's festival.
Yeah, absolutely. So what else have you kind of caught this past week on the big screen?
On the big screen, it would have been Vice. I saw that finally, which has been out in America for a while, but just out in time for us to catch it before the BAFTAs and the Oscars here, and I was pretty impressed. I wasn't as keen on it as I was The Big Short, which I thought was a spectacular, I was about to say documentary, but it's not really a documentary. It's sort of a fictional spin, although The Big Short was based on a book by Michael Lewis, who was looking at the financial crisis, but it was done in a way that even if you had no idea what was going on, you could follow just exactly how this entire mess happened. And Adam McKay sort of done that with Vice, and that taken this political figure that everyone's heard of, but maybe weren't too familiar with, and really sort of knuckled down and gotten into the core of who he was and what made him tick. And his vice was his particular vice, even though he was a VP. His vice was power, and he craved it and whatever. And yeah, I thought it was good. I thought Christian Bale was great, and it was almost sort of like a real life sort of Frank and Claire Underwood at times, with his wife played by Amy Adams sort of scheming their way. They didn't quite make it to the top, but one could argue again, looking at this film, that he did actually, and that he was the puppet master to W the whole time. Now you saw this at the end of last year. It was one of your top 5 of the year. Am I correct? You caught it again. What did you think of it on the second viewing?
I know sometimes you always think with a second viewing, is it going to hold up? And for me, it really did. And it was one of my favorite movies of the year because I have such a thing for American politics. I just love it, like the real niche stuff. And I just thought it was really great performances. And I think my favorite kind of part of the movie, I think you could almost split into sort of a ascent to the vice presidency and kind of the post of achieving that goal. And I think I prefer the sort of first part over the second one. I just sort of loved kind of those early years that were a bit more mysterious, that I didn't really know too much about. And, what he kind of did in the White House, I suppose I was quite nerdy to know relatively quite a bit about what he did, but perhaps not so much the scale that he had got up to. So I really found it interesting to see those early years and his involvement in some of the previous White House administrations. And I think I love Adam McKay's style that he did in The Big Short, and that you kind of execute again here. I just find it really exciting and interesting, and I'm already excited to think, what's he going to do next? And I never would have imagined that the director of something like Anchorman or anything like that would become the director. I'd be so excited to see their next drama. So yeah, I'm curious to see where we go next.
Yeah, no, I mean, speaking of Anchorman, I did have to chuckle at the long game he played on a particular reference, because at the end of Anchorman back in 2004, it sort of says, the narrator sort of saying how what everyone gets up to after Anchorman. It says that Brick Tamland would go on to become one of the top political advisors to the Bush administration. And then, 14 years later, he's then playing Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense for George W. Bush. And it's just like, wow, way to go, Adam McKay, to pay off. He's waited his time, but he's managed to pay off that joke in spectacular style, I thought.
What I liked as well is, like, you see, the character of Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney over such a significant period of decades, and it's so believable. You never look at that and think, oh my god, that's just people with a bit of makeup, they put on a bit of beef. Like, I think like the makeup job and the performances are so good, especially Christian Bale. And I think anyone that perhaps says that his nomination was just for putting on some weight and shaving his head are sorely mistaken.
Yeah, no, I mean, he completely disappears into the role. You forget that it's Bale, and it's just Cheney there, really. And Bale is so good in this film that he had me. They really got me up until about 10 minutes before the end. I was going to be coming out of this film going, well, maybe he was an all right guy. He was a loyal, devoted family man. But then, right, of course, at the end, he does something which is just really horrible and nasty. And it's like, oh, well, no, he is actually a total dick. So
I would recommend anyone that's watched this to seek out, if they didn't see it, Who is America, the Sacha Baron Cohen documentary comedy series where he sort of punks politicians, and one of them was Dick Cheney, who he manages to get in quite a few dick jokes, manages to get him to basically acknowledge he founded ISIS, and gets him to actually sign a waterboarding bottle, which he says that he used on his enemies and his wife. It's really well worth watching that. You watch something going, that guy was incredibly smart to have done all this. Wow, he sees 3 steps ahead. But Sacha Baron Cohen managed to get the better of him. Where was he when there was the road to Iraq?
Exactly. Although, actually thinking about it, given what's happening in the UK at the moment, and just how this Brexit situation is unfolding, and no one really has an idea of what's going on or how it happened, I'd like to see Adam McKay's next movie be about Brexit, because what I really miss at the moment is the Armando Iannucci, the thick of it and in the loop, but he said he can never go back to it because British politics has now become such a parody of itself. We probably need an American to do their take on what's going on at the moment, and I would certainly pay to see that movie.
Oh, most definitely. And so obviously last week we kind of started a new trend here on the show where each week we're going to recommend each a different movie directed by a woman so that you can take part in the 52 films by women pledge like us and at home yourself. So this week I'm curious to know, what movie are you going to recommend to our listeners to check out directed by female talent?
Well, it's a movie which is in cinemas at the moment, might only be for a few more days, and it's on I think it's on quite a small theatrical run. But if you do have it on at in your city, please go and check it out. And that is Destroyer by Karen Kuzma. Karen Kuzma is a director who started her career back in 2000 with Girl Fight. Sort of female boxing movie that starred Michelle Rodriguez. That was one that really sort of put her on the map. She also did the Charlize Theron Aeon Flux, but also a great film from a few years ago that was, I'm not sure if it was a theatrical release or if it was one that I certainly only discovered it on Netflix, but it's called The Invitation. It's about a guy who gets invited to this dinner party and he's not really sure why he's been invited, and then all these sort of secrets start to unfold at the table, and then you realize that something quite sinister is going on. It's a really, really fantastic film. I think I did it in a double bill with Coherence, which also happened to be something very strange happening at a dinner party. It's a wonderful double bill if you try it. But she's directed this film Destroy, which stars Nicole Kidman in one of those things which, she didn't get an Oscar nomination, but it was touted. She got a Golden Globe nomination for this. It was touted as one, the Nicole Kidman you've never seen before. But essentially, this is her monster. This is her, getting some facial prosthetics, some makeup on, looking a bit sort of haggard and stuff like that. But she plays a cop who was involved in an undercover event a few years ago, about sort of 16 years ago, and she attends the scene of a crime to find a dead body with a certain tattoo on the back of its neck, and she realizes that someone who was involved in that particular heist has come out of hiding, and she then attempts to sort of lure him out and sort of tie up loose ends because it could end in a very bad sort of career for her if what happens finally gets out in the open. And I just thought it was a really, really good film. She was fantastic in it. I thought the supporting cast, it's got Sebastian Stan and Toby Kebbell in it as well, and Scoot McNairy in a small role. Great cast, set in LA, and I thought it was really good in the fact, and this is, I know it's one of these sort of backhanded compliments, whatever, but it doesn't feel like it's directed by a woman. You wouldn't be able to tell. It's there's a great sort of shootout in a bank, you've got a sort of Michael Mann element there, but I just thought it was really gritty, really well told, very tightly shot. It's around about 2 hours, but it never really feels like that. Just sort of great gritty crime thriller that has a wee twist in the tail at the end, and I was thoroughly impressed and highly recommend that people can catch this if they can.
Yeah, it's definitely worth squeezing in if you've got a couple of days left. As I say, I don't think this one will be sticking around too long, but it's certainly worth catching. But my recommendation is if you run out of time to kind of catch your one at the cinema this week, mine comes out on DVD and Blu-ray next week in the UK, and that's The Miseducation of Cameron Post, directed by Desiree Akavan. And it felt like an appropriate one to pick as well because nearly a year ago today won the Grand Jury Prize at the Sundance Film Festival, which is on at the moment. And it's one that was kind of come back to mind for me because it was one of the highlights of last year for me, the story of Cameron Post, a young lesbian that's caught in the middle of a bit of a romantic moment with a woman by her boyfriend, and her religious aunt and guardian sends her off to a gay conversion school. It's a film I really like, and Desiree Akavan's one of these kind of people that she's only directed 2 movies, but she's recently just had this Channel 4 series called The Bisexual, and she's just such a great character. So, for Miseducation of Cameron Post, this is someone that is just such an interesting director. She's so vocal about, issues and so on, and I think it's really well worth checking out. Cameron Post, and Bisexual, it's on the 4OD kind of app and player as well, so I would highly recommend catching Miseducation of Cameron Post when I think it's available to stream now in the UK, but you can obviously catch it next week on DVD or Blu-ray if you get the chance.
Absolutely. Yeah, we both saw this last year, and it was, we both gave it a great review then, and it's one that sort of stayed with me, and I believe this she's done so well that she's got her own Girls on Tops tee. She got one for the Sundance London last year. So if you want to dress and support the female filmmakers, you can always get your Girls on Top tees. I've got a Tilda Swinton one. I think you've got the Greta Gerwig one. So.
And I do have the Desiree
You've got
Akhavan
Desiree
one as well.
Akhavan.
I got that for Christmas.
Well, fantastic. So there you go. You're on brand for 52 films by women. So.
Absolutely. So we'll kind of come now to, obviously you're Aberdeen, I'm Edinburgh, but I think we both share a love for the Glasgow Film Festival, and it's hard to believe it actually just launched in 2005. It feels like it's been around much longer, and it feels like it's been going from strength to strength, and in this year it looks like it can actually be one of the best years ever, with 337 screenings, talks, events featuring 7 world premieres, 102 UK premieres, and 49 Scottish premieres. I wish they rounded that one up to a nice even 50, all from 54 countries as well. Plenty of films directed by women. Where do you start with something like this when you've only got just shy of 2 weeks to try and catch all these things, with so many films competing against each other, so many amazing things on around the same time, different days? How do you get to Glasgow? What are your 5 films going to be? And we've set a bit of a rule for ourselves with the 5 that we're going to recommend here, Dallas, and it was a wise call by you, or else I think our top 5 might have been these 3 films in particular. So what rule did we impose upon ourselves?
Well, we basically imposed the rule that we can't mention. Well, we're not going to recommend it, because we're not going to recommend the 3 top films that are A24 related, because hopefully we've got tickets for each of these films already. We've already bought our tickets, so we're going to be seeing them, and we'll be covering them in a special episode of the A24 podcast, and that is 8th Grade, Under the Silver Lake, and the opening gala film, the mid-90s. So there's going to be a special episode directed to all of them, and it was basically anyone who's listened to this podcast or listened to the A24 project knows that we are very excited for those films, and we were going to mention those films. So they're in a separate little bubble over there, and we've managed to pick 5 different films, maybe different films each. There might be some crossover, we don't know. As with all our top 5s, we don't tell each other what we're going for, so we get to find out just at the same time as the listeners. So yeah, that's it. A24 to one side, and we've picked the rest of the best.
So what have you gone with for your 5th choice for the Glasgow Film Festival?
Well, my 5th choice is one of the Fright Fest films. Fright Fest is a horror festival which plays in London, and for the last few years they've come up to Glasgow to do like an all-nighter. It's sort of like one entire day, back-to-back horror films, and one that sort of stood out for me is called Zoo, and it tells the story of Karen and John, whose marriage is on the brink of collapse. Since learning of their inability to conceive, the spark between them has disappeared. They live together, yet shuffle through their apartment as if they were the walking dead. That is, until the world is hit by a pandemic that really does turn the living into zombies. Zoo is a jet black comedy about love, life, and zombies, following 2 people who are forced to reconnect as the world around them comes crashing down. So I was really sold on that from the synopsis. I thought that sounded like an interesting take on, and a nice sort of human take on the thing, where it's about a relationship within this sort of zombie apocalypse, rather than sort of random people who are thrown together to fight the zombies and stuff like that. I thought it'd be quite an interesting take, and one that I would potentially be looking out for at the festival. What about yourself?
Yeah, so my 5th choice, and it's, if anyone that knows me wouldn't be surprised that a movie like this is involved in my top 5, and it's called Her Smell, starring Elizabeth Moss, Cara Delevingne, and Dan Stevens, who I've absolutely fallen for since The Guest. And it's directed by Alex Ross Perry, and it's all about Becky Something, a front woman for a 90s rock band called Something. So she's a wife, mother, and super talented performer, and she's at the very top of her game, and the only way is, naturally, down. Through a hell of drugs, booze, fights, botched recording sessions, and public meltdowns over 2 hours 15 minutes, and a car crash of a life is rendered in blood, sweat, tears, and heart-rendering pathos. I am an absolute sucker for a movie that is about musicians, talent that have kind of gone off the rails, or even movies like Once, Sing Street, and so on, where it's all about using music to find love. I'm an absolute sucker for this genre. So Her Smell is a movie that completely passed me by. I've not heard about it at all. So when I was kind of looking through what was on, when I noticed a movie like that, it comes from Voltage Pictures as well, which are making quite the reputation for themselves in the past few years. This seemed like an easy pick, and it's one I can't wait to see in a few weeks' time.
That is one which I actually knew nothing about until you told me right now, because, yeah, when you're going through, 330 odd screenings and whatever, it can be difficult. You're always going to miss something, and I've only just got the physical brochure to actually have a proper pour over, and yeah, that's one that passed me by, but that's what, podcasts like this are for, to highlight the ones which you otherwise might have missed. So yeah, excellent choice. And I'm wondering if a sort of riches to rags music story might make another appearance in your top 5. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Absolutely. So what's your number 4?
Number 4 is one from the festival's special events streaming sort of side, and they always do great events, special screenings at the Glasgow Film Festival. Last year, I think it was The Thing, which was done in like a ski park and stuff, but they've got Blair Witch out in the woods somewhere. But the one for me this year has to be a film which is in my top 10 of all time, and it's the 40th anniversary screening of Alien, which features, for those who are lucky enough to get tickets for the first part, which features a laser tag setup where you are probably not only fighting each other with laser tag, but I expect the appearance of a Xenomorph or two to pop up. So not only do you get a great screening of the 40-year-old classic sci-fi film, but you get to have a bit of fun with some laser tag beforehand. They've done the Big Lebowski with bowling. They always find a way to put a unique spin on this, and yeah, that sounds that'd be the one for me.
Yeah, that certainly sounds good. I mean, as someone that loves Alien, I was very tempted by this, but sometimes I find myself thinking like, I kind of get too lost in some of the gimmick sides, and I'm like, it's maybe not my cup of tea, but this one sounds really interesting, and I know there's a Blair Witch Project event as well, which will be taking place in a secret location, which I imagine must be some sort of woods somewhere. I can't imagine it being like, I think when they did the Day of the Dead or whatever it was last year in a shopping mall. So I'm curious to know where that one's going to end up as well.
It's probably going to be on the outskirts of Glasgow, in the middle of nowhere. I think the joke would be is if the buses just left them to get back on the road. I think that would be the best thing to do. Or it goes really meta and someone actually just films them as everyone is lost, and then they find the footage 20 years later. Who knows?
Absolutely. So my number 4, and you get the bonus of a special guest at this one, is Benjamin. So Simon Amstell is one of my favourite comedians, kind of thinkers really in that sort of genre, and I'm always excited to see what he kind of comes up with. So this sort of sounds like another kind of genre of film that I really love as well, and that's a kind of coming of age story. So this is a sort of semi-autobiographical story where it's all about a young character racked with self-doubt and seemingly determined to sabotage his own love life. So filmmaker Benjamin is consumed with nerves as his new feature film premieres at the London Film Festival. An emotional wreck after the end of a 2-year relationship, he meets French singer Noah. They seem made for each other, but can Benjamin ever convince himself that he's worthy in the love of true happiness? So a really good kind of interesting semi-autobiographical story from Simon Amstell. So, a young movie, a story that has a bit of LGBTQI representation, and I'm always like a little movie about filmmakers as well, so this is one I think is going to really put a bit of a smile on people's face and perhaps be a real crowd pleaser.
Yeah, no, I saw the synopsis for that one and it looked very interesting. I do like anything to do set within the world of film, so I think it's going to be quite a fun and interesting one to see. Also to see what his view of the London Film Festival is. To have a film festival showing a film about a film festival is always maybe a bit of a gamble, but I'm presuming it's a rather favourable, loving perspective of the festival, not a terrible, oh no, why does my film, if they wanted to do a horror story set at a film festival, they just set it in the lines for the London Film Festival at around about 8:30 with everyone murdering each other trying to get in, probably.
Absolutely. So what's your third pick then?
My third pick is a film which is, I've wanted to see this one just based on the previous 2 efforts from this director, and that is S. Craig Zahler's Dragged Across Concrete. People may know him from his debut film Bone Tomahawk and then his follow-up Brawl in Cell Block 99. And this, he's returning with an unflinching and gritty tale that is sure to cement his reputation as one of the leading voices in genre-blending film today. When two police officers are suspended following footage of their strong-arm tactics goes viral, they take it upon themselves to delve into the criminal underworld. What they will cover is more than what they were expecting. And this stars Vince Vaughn, whose career, I think, hugely benefited from Brawl in Cell Block 99. It was just a completely sort of different take of what we've seen from Vaughn in the past, from the likes of Dodgeball, Swingers and that. This was shaven head, really sort of hard, gritty, brutal. He's such an imposing physical presence on screen. So I'm hoping that the Vaughnaissance, as I might call it, continues with this one. You know, he's got the same director, and who knows, maybe some of that good luck will rub off on Mel Gibson, a man with a checkered past who's maybe looking to be accepted again on the big screen. I guess we'll have to see if that happens. But, you know, if it's anywhere near the level of Bone Tomahawk and Brawl Cell Block 99, this should be, well, one of the most violent films you'll see at the festival, but also a terrific film as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a film I was really keen to see at the London Film Festival, but scheduling meant I wasn't able to see it. And sadly, again, with scheduling, I'm not going to be able to see this one in Glasgow. So a bit of a disappointment for me there. But I can imagine this one's going to get a bit of a release in some form or another in the UK. So I'm holding out for it.
Yeah, I think it's guaranteed a small release if nothing else. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see when it comes. I mean, that is one thing which I always do actually when looking at these festivals is, when are the release dates? You know, are they coming out within like a couple of weeks of the festival and stuff like that? You know, if there's things which are coming out fairly soon or have confirmed release dates, they'll probably be slightly lower priority for me. It's if, you know, something is not got a release date or is coming out 6 months later, whatever, they're the ones to prioritize, I think, for me sometimes. But, you know, sometimes something can just, I've got to see it because of the talent involved sometimes.
Yeah, well, I've picked you had a bit of a horror to start your one, and I'm going for a bit of a closer to home horror, and it's a documentary that's really caught my eye called Do No Harm, brackets, Eminent Monsters. It has two titles, so it has a title and it has an alternative title. So Do No Harm is the binding principle of psychiatry. It is abandoned time after time in the shocking and utterly compelling exploration of a profession's collusion with state-sponsored torture over the past 70 years. So director Stephen Bennett untangles a web of secrecy, denial and being complicit to the extent that to explore the legacy of Scottish-born psychiatrist Dr. Ewan Cameron, not to be probably mixed with the DJ, and the experiments that helped devise systems of torture employed across the globe from Northern Ireland to Guantanamo Bay. So I'm really curious to see this one, especially kind of how, you know, in Scotland we like to think of ourselves as the patron saints of everything that's great in the world. I'm curious to see our role in torture that's gone all around the world, and it'll be interesting to see how this works and how psychiatry can justify this, perhaps.
Yeah, no, that does sound fascinating. And I was reading that's part of the Stranger Than Fiction strand in this year's festival, and apparently basically based on the reception and the success of Ne Parasan, the closing film of last year, they wanted to put more of a focus on documentary filmmaking in this year's festival. So it's great to see that. And yeah, once again, a spotlight being shined on sort of Scottish-born psychiatry and stuff like that after the film a couple of years ago with David Tennant, the name of which, of course, has completely gone out of my head just now. But yeah, he was. So yeah, there's definitely, I think there's a lot more work done in psychiatry and stuff that people maybe realise that it's come out of Scotland. So it's great to see that being brought to the big screen again.
So what movie has made it to number 2? Not quite number 1, but close enough.
It is The Vanishing. Now, it's a surprise.
Oh, that was so close to making my list.
It's a bit surprise to me, as it probably is to everyone, that I've actually picked a Gerard Butler film to be one of my most anticipated for the festival. But it is because I saw the trailer maybe about a month ago, and this is from director Christopher Nylom, who is a master of stylish suspense. He directed The Killing and Taboo, Both terrific series. The Killing is one of my sort of favourite sort of foreign language sort of Scandi crime dramas, and Taboo with not Jared, but Tom Hardy was just fantastic as well. And he's taken his talents and he's turned it to apparently the true events known as the Flannan Isle mystery, in which three lighthouse keepers, played by Peter Mullen, Jared Butler, and young Connor Swindles, arrive on an uninhabited island 20 miles off the Scottish coast, the start of a 6-week shift that is anything but routine, as they make a discovery that provokes greed, fear, paranoia, and the vicious fight for survival. What lies at the heart of the mystery could be the root of all evil. Now, the trailer for this looks really good. It's sort of nice, contained, isolated drama. 3 men on an island. It's got a sort of Treasure of the Sierra Madre vibe of, what they find leads them to sort of distrust each other. They've got to remain loyal and things like that. And I think it's going to be a really good sort of character piece. And, Jared Butler does get a lot of stick for, stuff like Geostorm and whatever. But, when it comes to homegrown films, Scottish films, you just have to look back around about maybe 6 years or so. There was a film, Dear Frankie, which was set in Glasgow, and he was really good in that. And I think this could be a return to form from him, and the chance to do something which doesn't require his physical muscles, but he gets to flex his acting muscles instead. So.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one as well, and it'll be interesting to hear Gerard Butler won't have the stress of trying to put on an American accent this time. So yeah, I think it's going to be certainly a real good movie, and one I can imagine I think should get a big release.
I think it does have I think it has got a release lined up, but I can't remember when. But it's going to be distributed by Lionsgate, so I think they will be giving that a fairly decent push when it comes to the time.
Well, I've gone for my second choice, The Wedding Guest, and it's going to be a movie that immediately I read it and I thought, oh, that sounds really good. And then the biggest selling point I didn't even realise till last, and that is going to be the new movie from Michael Winterbottom, who has done some of brilliant movies in the past few years, something like The Trip, for example, which I'm sure everyone's seen. But it's the story of Jay, who's played by Dave Patel, as he leaves England and heads to India, where he rents a car and buy some weapons. So he plans to kidnap a young Muslim woman called Samira, but she chooses to go with him willingly to escape an unwanted arranged marriage. Bullets fly, lives are lost, and the couple run for their lives, heading for Goa and trying to survive as they pass through some of the most remote and dangerous areas along the Pakistan-Indian border. So I read that synopsis and I'm like, that sounds interesting, but there seems to be a lot of things there that are missing that I feel I really want to find out. Why he's heading there, why he wants to kidnap someone, why he's buying all weapons. It seems like a really kind of a synopsis that really makes you kind of go, oh, this could be mysterious and interesting. So I'm really curious to see what Michael Winterbottom does. He certainly does travel journalism well and things like The Trip, so I'm curious to see this movie up close.
Yeah, no, I think Michael Winterbottom is someone who is, like you say, incredibly versatile. Every single film he does he never follows like one film with the exact copy. He's always looking to do something different. So it's going to be, I think that'll be an interesting one to see how that one plays out. And I think Dev Patel is a great sort of actor, so I'm excited to see what he brings to that role. Yeah.
So what's your number one? We haven't clashed with any of our choices so far, so can we make it a home run?
I think we probably will, because this one is a soft spot for me, and when I found it was in there, it's like, I was always going to want to see this one, and it's Fighting with My Family. And this is a film directed by Stephen Merchant. It's the tag team you never knew you wanted. Produced by the Dwayne The Rock Johnson and directed by Stephen Merchant, it invites you to squeeze into the spandex spray of the fake tan and strut around the wonderful world of wrestling. Merchant's solo directorial debut is a wisecracking, warm-hearted true-life tale of Sativa Raya, played by Florence Pugh, who is part of a tight-knit Norwich family who scrapes a living on the local wrestling scene. Her dream is to become a bright new WWE star. When opportunity knocks, does she have what it takes to make the grade and stay true to herself? Now, this is at Sundance at the very moment. I think it's getting its world premiere tonight, so we should be I've seen a few sort of press reviews coming out, and it's very positive at the moment. Stephen Merchant seems to have done a great job. Florence Pugh's getting a great sort of review as the wrestler who would become the superstar Paige in the WWE, based on a true story, and also someone else who's getting a lot of rave reviews for his role as the brother who doesn't quite make it is Jack Lowden, man of the moment, who's been in Mary Queen of Scots and, Star of Caliber and the like. So I think this will be a breakout hit over here, certainly with the fact that it's got Stephen Merchant's involvement. A very sort of British comedy, but also it will translate very well in America with the fact that it's all about wrestling and stuff like that. And I think this it'd be something that'd be a real crowd pleaser. And if it's got Dwayne the Rock Johnson starring as Dwayne the Rock Johnson doing what Dwayne the Rock Johnson does, and I don't know how many more times I can see Dwayne the Rock Johnson in this, but I think everyone's going to smell what he's cooking, and we've got another hit on our hands. So.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one as well. I only realised this week after seeing the trailer quite a few times recently that that's Jack Lowden in it, former filibuster guest, I must shamelessly say. So yeah, I'm curious to see this one. I think it's going to be a real kind of crowd pleaser, and I did think the trailer somewhat spoiled the entire plot of the movie, but that's okay. It's I'm going to see it anyway.
It's always the issue of when it's based on a true story. Anyone who knows wrestling will know how far this particular wrestler gets, but again, I guess it's trying to follow the sort of Rocky narrative of someone from the small town struggling to make ends meet, just playing the town halls and stuff like that in the UK. Can they make it in the the world, the wrestling outfit in the world? Can they rise to the top? And there'll always be obstacles on the way and stuff like that. But I mean, yeah, I don't think it'll break the mold in terms of that genre. It'll probably beat for beat you'll know exactly how it's going to go, but I think you're probably going to leave with a huge smile on your face nonetheless.
Yeah, most definitely.
So what have you picked as your number one for the Glasgow Film Festival?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to have a chance to catch this movie again, but I'm going to give myself a bit of a mouthpiece here, and I'm going to say that everyone should get along and catch Vox Lux. It was my favourite film of 2018, and it's this, I think the less you know, the better going into this movie. But all you should know is this is the dark, twisted sister of something like A Star Is Born, starring Natalie Portman, Jude Law, and Raffi Cassidy. This film has been disgracefully overlooked at the Oscars and pretty much every award ceremony. I'm absolutely stunned. So I encourage everyone to go along and see Vox Lux. It's going to be your new favourite cult hit movie. It's really dark, disturbing, and if you just know that it's about the story of a singer and her rise to fame, that's all you need to know. So it's on Saturday the 2nd and Sunday the 3rd. So please get along and catch this movie. It's really going to make your day.
Yeah, no, I was lucky enough to catch it in New York at the end of last year as well. And I went in knowing very little about it and was blown away by this. And like you say, Natalie Portman should have been on the ballots for Best Supporting Actress because she's phenomenal in this, and it was close to being on my list, but I had a sneaking suspicion it was going to be on your list somewhere, so that's why I didn't put it on mine. But yeah, like Lee says, go in knowing as little as possible. Don't watch the trailers, don't read even the synopsis or whatever. Just go in, and I think you're going to be blown away by what you see. So.
Excellent. Well, there's 10 different choices for you for the Glasgow Film Festival, but I'm sure you've all got your favourites that you're looking forward to as well. So we're looking forward to the Glasgow Film Festival, and hopefully you're even more excited after listening to us. So Dallas, if people wanted to reach out to you on Twitter or anything, where could people
find you? They can find me
you?
on Twitter at champcelluloid, and they can read all my regular reviews on championshipcelluloid.blogspot.com. And where can people catch you?
Yeah, you can find me championing Vox Lux every place I go, and you can also find me on Twitter at Lee_Nostromo, and you can find us both on the aforementioned A24 project. We dropped our 8th episode this week, which had Revenge of the Green Dragons and A Most Violent Year. So thank you to everyone that's checking out that show and this show, and we've had some really nice reviews for Filibuster recently, which some of them were quite sweet, and big shout out to the person that's called us the new Anton Deck, which I can only imagine I'm the smaller one of the two in that one. Yeah. So there's something for you to dive into. So Dallas is going to go check the iTunes reviews for Filibuster, and if you can do that too, to check out that yes, someone has called us the new Anton Deck, you can leave us a review as well.
One, does that mean I'm the one that's addicted to drugs and drives this car into people?
Yeah. Well, next week it'll be me and Holly Willoughby discussing our favourite top 5. So, so thank you to everyone that listens and leaves reviews. It always really means a hell of a lot. So, we look forward to joining you next week, and enjoy the Glasgow Film Festival. Bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.